Hi, welcome to engVid. I'm Adam. In today's video, we're going to look at the compound subject. So this is a grammar lesson, and it doesn't matter if you're a beginner or advanced. It's very important to understand this because it's very easy to make mistakes, especially in writing. So we're going to start by looking at the subject. What is a subject? Just to refresh our memories. The subject is the thing in the sentence or in the clause that is going to do the action or is going to be in the situation of the be verb if it's not an action verb, right? So we always have to make sure that our subject and our verb agree. They must agree, especially in terms of number. If you have a singular subject, you must have a singular verb, right? So let's look at this example. The doctor is off this week, right? So when we're talking about the doctor, there's one doctor. His or her situation is that he or she is off this week. They're on vacation, right? So we have a singular verb. Now we're going to look at compounds in terms of taking two pieces and making one subject out of the two individual pieces. We're going to look at and we're going to look at or. Either or, neither nor. Okay, but we're going to look at or after. We're going to start with and. First thing you need to remember about and, it works like a plus sign. 1 plus 1 equals 2. So when you take two individual subjects and you join them together, you're creating a two or more situation or two or more subject. Therefore, you have a plural subject, right? So the doctor and the nurse are off. So plural, whereas you had singular. Now, it doesn't matter if you have plural pieces. The doctor and the nurse are, the doctors and the nurse are, the doctors and the nurses are, any combination, because you're joining them into a group, and now they are plural, and you have a matching verb. Now, it's very important to remember that we're talking about compounds and we're using a compound conjunction. But if you use the doctors, well, let's just say the doctor, no S, the doctor, as well as the nurses, are off this week. Would this be correct? No, it would not, because you're not making a compound. This is an extra, okay? The doctor. But if you had the doctors, as well as the nurses, are off this week, that is correct, because then you would still have a plural to a plural. Singular with as well as, singular. Plural with as well as, plural. Now, as well as, along with, together with, accompanied by, all of these expressions are not compound conjunctions. So we only have a compound subject when we have a compound conjunction joining them, okay? But there are situations where you're going to have a compound, but you still have a singular subject. Spaghetti and meatballs is delicious, not are. Why is this singular? Because this is a grouped thing. They always go together. Spaghetti and meatballs is one idea. Even though you're joining them, they are basically one item. Peanut butter and jelly is my favorite snack. Or peanut butter and jelly sandwiches are my favorite snack. But then you're using it as an adjective. If it's one piece, if it's a collective, then it's singular. If it's two separate items, then you're making a compound and then you have a plural. Look at this one. The founder and CEO of the company is ready to sell. The founder and CEO of the company are ready to sell. Now, which of these is correct? Well, both can be correct. You can have one person who is both the founder of the company and the CEO of the company. So if this and this refer to the same person, then it's a singular subject and you're using is. If the founder and the CEO are two different people, then you're creating a compound, you have a plural, and then you have are as correct. So it's very important to understand what the two pieces on either side of and are doing. Are they two separate things or are they one combined thing? And then you'll know which, if it's a plural or a singular subject. I'm going to give you some more examples after, so you'll get an idea. But first, let's look at or. Okay, let's look at the compound conjunction or nor. Okay? Neither Tom nor his sister likes to cook. Neither Tom nor his sisters like to cook. Okay? Basically, what you have to remember about or nor is that the verb will agree with the last part of the compound. So if the second part is singular, the verb will match singular. If the second noun is plural, the verb will match plural. So sisters like, sister likes. Same with or. So here's a situation. Oh, I forgot an R here. Either Jill or Kevin needs to be let go. So I'm a company, I need to make some cuts in the budget. I need to fire one of these people because they're too expensive. Their salary is too high. So either Jill or Kevin needs to be let go. Singular or singular, needs. Either Jill or the marketing team needs to go. Now, team is a singular. Although there are a lot of people in the team, the whole collective, needs to be let go because all of them make as much money as she does. Either Jill or 3 junior managers need to be let go. So now I have a plural here, and therefore I have a plural verb to agree with it. So always go with the last or the second noun in the compound subjects when you have or nor. And as soon as you're joining 2 separate things, you have a plural. Or depends on the second noun of the compound. Okay? You're going to understand this a little bit more with some more examples, so let's get to those. Okay, I want to mention a few other things about the compound subjects before we go, and I'm going to look at some more examples. First of all, Bill and I are going to see a movie. Bill's one person, I'm another. Together, we are 2. Now, if you're not sure about the compound, if you're not sure if it's separate things or if it's one thing, try to replace it with a pronoun. So if I say Bill and I can replace this with we. So as soon as you have the we pronoun, you understand you need the are, not the is. So always try to replace your compound with a pronoun. If you can't, it means it's probably one thing, right? It's probably it. So I'm going to look at another example. Now, I and Bill are going to see a movie. Technically, this is correct, but people don't usually put the I first. They put the Bill first. Bill and I are going to see. And you'll rarely hear I and Bill. Why? I'm not exactly sure. They're both correct, but common usage is to put the I second. On the other hand, Bill and she are going to see a movie. She and Bill are going to see a movie. More common, she first, Bill second. But again, both are correct. You can use either one at your leisure. I generally second in most cases. Now, let's look at this sentence. Heather's mother-in-law and dad are spending time together. Okay? Heather's mother-in-law, one person. Dad, second person. Together they make 2. They are spending. Now, Heather's mother-in-law and dad. You must understand that dad is Heather's dad, not the mother-in-law's dad. If I said Heather's mother-in-law and her dad, then it becomes a little bit confusing. Because who's dad? Because there are 2 women here, right? If ever you're not sure when you're putting the 2 items of a subject together, rearrange it to make it more clear. Heather's dad and mother-in-law are going. It's very clear that the dad is Heather's, not the mother-in-law's. Okay? Just to keep that in mind in terms of positioning the compounds. Winning and losing is a mindset. Winning and losing are one thing. When you're playing sports or whatever, winning and losing is part of the game. They're not 2 separate things. But wins or losses, these are countable things. You can actually count wins, you can count losses, therefore they are 2 separate things. So sometimes the connections are not very clear. If they're not very clear, change the sentence around, right? It is a mindset whether you win or lose, right? And then it's a whole different sentence, there's no confusion, and it's one thing. Mindset is the subject instead of the other 2. Here, it's very clear, so you can leave it alone. Wins or losses, do not. Not does not, because I have plural, plural, and the second one is plural. 10 successes or 1 failure amount to the same thing. 1 failure, my mistake, amounts to the same thing, because you have the second one is a singular. one failure or 10 successes amount to the same thing. Okay, in my mind, I wrote it the other way around. So, second one is singular, singular. Second one is plural, plural. Okay? Now, keep in mind, sometimes you have collective nouns as subjects. Don't confuse collective nouns like the police, the staff, the team. That's a different thing from a compound noun. There is a video about collective nouns. You can look in the description box of this video and you will find the link to it. Make sure you separate the two things and you'll understand how those work and how compound subjects work and how to agree with the verb in any situation. If you have any questions, please go to engvid.com. You can ask me there in the forum. There's also a quiz. You can practice your understanding of compound subjects. Don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel, and I'll see you again soon. Bye-bye.